Welcome to Supply Chain Now, the voice of global supply chain. Supply Chain Now focuses on the best in the business for our worldwide audience, the people, the technologies, the best practices, and today's critical issues, the challenges and opportunities. Stay tuned to hear from those making global business happen right here on Supply Chain Now.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Scott Luton here with you on Supply Chain Now. We've got a great show teed up here today. We're diving into a conversation that's focused on not just optimizing supply chain performance and overall business performance, but optimizing profitability. Stay tuned as we walk through a case study that will illustrate 3 ways a TMS can provide predictable financials and a whole lot more. Should be a great show. But before we get started, if you enjoyed today's show, be sure to share it with a friend or your network. They'll be glad you did. Okay, want to get to work and welcome in our distinguished guests here today, starting with Shawn Gagg, CIO of Jaeckle Distributors, and he's joined by Shannon Vaillancourt, backed by popular demand, CEO with RateLinx. Hey, Shawn, great to have you here on Supply Chain Now. How you doing?
Good.
Wonderful. And Shannon, as always, welcome back to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Scott?
Excellent. We're trying to navigate the heat like everyone else, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
This is the one time of year I'm glad I don't have a great golf game because I don't feel compelled to get outside and show it off some, huh? Anyway, Shannon and Shawn. So we're doing a homework here. And, Shannon, we go back a ways. Shawn, great to meet you, but I understand y'all have something big in common. You're both big time, not just pro football fans, but you're big time Chicago Bears fans, right? And the National Football League's already begun training camp. Most rookies reported for camp last week, right? So they're already out there in the heat, memorizing the playbook, going through all the drills. And a lot of veterans, in fact, veterans for all teams, will be reporting in camp by tomorrow unless they're holding out on contracts. So the season is right around the corner. And that begs the question, Shawn, I'm going to start with you. Give us one fearless prediction for the 2024 NFL football season.
As much as I would like to take my Bears, I'm going to say San Diego Chargers. I can't go with anybody in the division. I would feel like then I'm selling out the Bears, right?
The Chargers to win it all. You heard it here from Shawn Gagg. Shannon, that sets a tall bar. Are you going to be as fearless and pick a Super Bowl winner?
Well, there will not be a three-peat this year because the Bears will not get the number 1 pick for the 3rd year in a row. So that three-peat will not happen. I'm pretty confident about that.
That's a good prediction, too. I am curious, since both of y'all are Bears fans, Caleb Williams, I think that was a quarterback that went number 1. Really curious to see him. Well, hey, I'm just excited. The football season is just around the corner. College and pros, it's a great time of year. But we got a lot to get into here outside of sports, Shannon and Shawn. And where I want to start here as we get into our conversation, again, folks, we're going to be diving into really 3 ways a TMS can provide predictable financials for companies out there and a whole bunch more. But before we do, Shawn, let's level set and offer some context for folks that may not be familiar with Jaeckle Distributors. Can you tell us about yourself and about your organization, Shawn?
Jaeckle Distributors here. We're based in Madison, Wisconsin. I have a dual role here. I'm CIO and I'm VP of Sales and Marketing. So I've been here for about 12 and a half years. We kind of decided to merge those roles. So much of what we do from a technology standpoint is to benefit our customers. And so that's why it sort of makes sense to merge these roles. We're a family-owned business-to-business flooring and surfacing distributor. It's 3rd generation family-owned business. The grandsons of the owners still run the business. It had very much a family feel in the company. We have 6 locations in the Midwest, including here in Madison. We service about 11 states. And as I said, I've been here for about 12 and a half years.
Love it. And I love on the front end of your response, the incredible role that technology can play in optimizing the customer experience. I love seeing those use cases, be it in supply chain or elsewhere. Shannon, switching gears here. A lot of our viewers and our global audience will recognize you. We've enjoyed a wide array of conversations going back a ways, but for the handful of folks that may be catching their first show here today featuring you, can you tackle 2 things for us? Your extensive industry background, for the handful of folks may not know, and secondly, why you chose to develop ShipLinx TMS. Shannon?
Let's see. I've been in the industry for a little over 30 years now. Started way back in the early 90s. So back before you had to worry about outages, CrowdStrike. And back then it was, life was a lot simpler, even though it didn't feel like it at the time. And, just throughout the years of working with customers like Shawn, that's when I first met Shawn at his previous role back in 93. Just from those days till now, I just saw that, the technology really was needed and it had to be put together in a certain way to allow the companies to run their businesses in the unique fashion that we find that they have to run it. So that's why we made our software the way it's built, with the extensibility, which provides the customizations really that we're able to do for a customer, but yet still give them version upgrades. I learned that, in the winter of 94.
Okay.
There's, not two sure things in life. There's three, death, taxes, and a UPS rate change. So you have to be able to update the software every single year because the carriers are going to change rates. They're going to change rules, things like that. So that's why we built the software the way that it's built today.
Love it. So you're saying you started in industry when you were about 2 years old, Shannon Vaillancourt, if my math is right.
I'm not afraid to admit how old I am. I am who I am. My kids are actually older than I was when I started in this industry. So
really,
it's frightening when I think about it.
I loved your comment there. Death, taxes, and carrier rate changes, things to expect in life. Well, moving right along, Shawn, what were some of the issues that y'all were experiencing in your shipping operations there at Jaeckle that you really wanted to address and improve?
Yeah, I think for us, we always looked at freight as sort of a macro expense category for us. So what I mean by that is it was sort of this lump sum. We would judge it by whether it had gone up or gone down, but we didn't have a lot of detail about it. And we certainly didn't have it where it was attached to certain metrics of our business that we thought would be helpful. And at the time, the distributor I had been at before, where I'd met Shannon, I really didn't know who to go to when I got here. And so I had the relationship with Shannon, called him and sort of struck up the conversation, kind of told him what our needs were, and really had lost touch with him, didn't know that he had sort of, developed the software. And so that's kind of really when we started to work together some years ago, us bringing RateLinx in as a solution for us. So it really was in response to us to try to become more detailed and more surgical about how we were doing freight costs.
Shannon, that walk down memory lane when y'all first met and all the work y'all have done ever since. And he was talking as he finished up his response there, being more detailed, more surgical, certainly more successful with shipping operations. Some of those things that you heard him share, is it common with other manufacturing, distribution, retail, e-commerce clients that y'all have at RateLinx? And what other different issues do you see with both small and mid-sized businesses as well as enterprise clients, Shannon?
Oh, it's very common, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it from our perspective, I guess. The challenge that a lot of customers have and a lot of companies have is trying to match up the freight cost and that shipment to the actual order. So they do lump sum it a lot. So they're looking at their lump sum cost of freight, and then they'll spread it out, like they say, spread it out like peanut butter across all the orders, and they come up with some average cost, and that's how they measure their performance. And then, they're using these numbers to not only drive profitability within the organization, but I've also heard that they leverage this to also pay commission to salespeople. I've heard that a lot. So that's where, then people get all upset because they're like, hey, wait, this wasn't that big of an order. Why did I get that much freight allocated to it? That's because they just average it out, spread it like peanut butter across everything. So not unusual, unfortunately.
Well, I'm glad you shared that because, Shawn, going back to you, as we've had lots of these conversations in recent years, I've been surprised more and more that a lot of companies are just spreading out like peanut butter, right? Looking at shipping costs as a lump sum expense. But tell us, Shawn, why do a lot of successful companies separate the shipping costs from the item cost?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I can talk about, the company I'm at now, the company I was at before. So I'm not sure I'm speaking for everybody here, but I know for us, one of the things I think that we wanted to be able to do is we have some robust analytics, but we also do function out of these 6 locations, these 11 states, we have about what we would call 33 territories, meaning territory managers that are functioning out there. And as Shannon kind of touched on, we wanted to basically go, how are we doing by manufacturer? How are we doing in each of these regions? Where is it that our expenses are maybe not optimal? And so for us, the only way to be able to really do that is to be able to start to get some of that sort of detailed information by shipment or by order. The owner had started the process, I think, of saying, hey, what's in our ERP system is great, but we really need some business intelligence data beyond that. And so the sort of path or the strategy to do that was sort of already underway. And then you look at to different parts of the organization, different expense categories to say, how do you make that fit within what we're trying to do as a company to sort of be able to manage the business better?
Shannon, speak to that. I would argue that no matter your size, if you're an organization like Jaeckle, 6 locations, 11 states, 33 territories, it's probably just even that more important to be able to separate things out. But what's the disconnect, Shannon? Why are more companies not doing that? Your thoughts?
I think they are doing it. It's more a question of how are they doing it and at what cost. So usually when we work with a company that wants to allocate the freight costs this way, we find that they're doing it manually. The bigger the company, the more likely they are to have a team of people that are doing that manual allocation. So what that means is they're going to be behind. So they're trying to run the business by looking in the rearview mirror is what happens to them, because they're maybe a month or 2 behind on getting everything matched up and allocated correctly. So really, it's not only the companies like a Jaeckle that maybe it's a little bit smaller that wasn't doing it, where now they're like, well, I've got 2 choices. I either put a team in place or I look for a system to do it. And the problem with a team is it could be more expensive and you're going to deal with variability, because that's when you start dealing with the human element. And as much as we don't like to admit it, we're just not as great as we think we are. Some days we're sick, some days we're tired, sometimes we go on vacation for 8 days straight, things like that will come up somehow.
What's interesting about this, and one of the shows you and I sat on probably 3 or 4 months ago, when we talked about how a lot of organizations will throw as many human employees as they can. One of the last folks that joined us, they reached a tipping point. We couldn't throw any more talent at it. And they had to, like so many companies these days, turn to technology to do it and do it better. It doesn't mean you don't do it with the human element, which is so important, but we got to leverage technology. And I think that's one of the big points you're making, Shannon.
Well, and a good example, when I look at, some of the stuff that we have to do here for our customers, the auditing piece that we do, we added a new auditor a couple months ago. He came to us from in the industry, and where he was at before, they did everything manually. Mm-hmm. And his quota was to do like 80 to 90 invoices a day he had to audit. And he comes here and he's doing, thousands, because he's paired with the technology.
Right.
The technology is doing really the time-consuming part. And then the human element is there to make the decision. And I think that's ultimately what is the right pairing. So, he's like, my God, this is unbelievable how much I'm able to get through in a given day. And it's like, well, that's technology.
And I would probably argue subjectively is that the days are a bit more fulfilling when we leverage technologies, just like you described there. Excellent point. Okay. So Shawn, we promised here today to walk through 3 ways a TMS can provide companies more predictable profits, amongst other things. So Shawn, building on what we've already spoken about, what would you say is the formal first step to wrapping our arms around shipping costs? Your thoughts?
Well, for us, it was, I'm going to use the term itemize, but I think it's to provide more detail, to be more surgical about the expense tied to the shipment or tied to the order. As Shannon kind of talked about, even if we were to do that, it would have been very manual for us. I think we felt like we had a good technology platform a good business intelligence platform to be able to load the data and do the visualizations and all that kind of stuff. But it really sort of was a tool that we sort of needed to load meaningful data into. So for us, the very first step for us was to say, when Shannon and I first started talking about this, is, how do we really itemize these freight costs? And the other thing I think that they could help us with is some of the communications with the carriers to be able to say, okay, this is the information we're going to give you. This is the information we need to get back from you on your invoices to be able to tie this to our order. So for us, that's out of the box. That was our first step.
Love it. Itemization, the power to do that and do it effectively in those critical carrier conversations. Shannon, you've worked with all sorts of sizes of companies over the last 30 years when you started at 2 years old. How often do you find that shippers aren't matching every shipment to their freight invoice? And what's the holdback? Why aren't they?
Well, we find it a lot that's happening. Most companies, that's usually why they are looking for something, is they're struggling to do that. It comes down to having a way to do it systematically, because it's a lot of work. The challenge with matching a shipment to an invoice is the time lag between the two transactions. Believe it or not, I find that seems to be the challenge to it. You do a shipment today, you're not going to get a freight invoice for 7 to 10 days later. So you've got this invoice, and maybe the carrier didn't capture all the relevant reference field information correctly. Now you're going and digging back through 7 to 10 days, so it's like you've got a 3-day window of shipments to try to figure out which one this was. You can't pinpoint it as well. And I think that's the challenge. So you got to have a good system for it. And then when there are data issues, what are they exactly and how do you solve it? And that's where I think the experience that we have comes into play, where we've done this and we know how to solve it and we can share those best practices. Whereas as a company, you don't know. This is your first try. So you're going to try something that maybe we already know just doesn't work. Or you get lucky and you hit it the first time. Who knows?
And then go to Vegas and bet the farm on Red 19. That happens. Really quick, Shannon, one of the things I heard in your response, I'll see if you agree with me, especially with that lag time, is it seems like some teams will be fighting against the tyranny of the today, the tyranny of the urgent, because that happened in the past and it sometimes doesn't seem as important, although there's major impact by focusing there as much as what's going on today. Would you generally agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. There's the problems of today are always worse than the problems from a week ago, because it's been a week. So must be okay, right? Nobody's still complaining about it. It is the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. And that's where they'll be like, that's close enough. And off they go. That's where, it's more than just horseshoes and hand grenades sometimes when it comes to the close enough counts on the freight invoice side.
Excellent point there. All right. So Shawn, good stuff. So now that we have matched the order to the shipment and the shipments to the freight invoice, as well as you were talking about, empowering some of those critical carrier conversations, which are really important, what would you say is that next critical step?
I think for us, it was sort of making sure that the contract rates were accurate. I'm not sure we necessarily would have seen this at the start of this, but for us, I think then the next step is, because we have 6 branches, because we deal with a number of carriers. I mean, we have probably 70 plus carriers, 4 to 5 parcel relationships. We do have our own fleet that we've also worked with Shannon to go, okay, how do we incorporate that into our data? We have the accessorial job site delivery, oversized, advanced notifications, lift gates, some of those kinds of things. All of those relationships become, as you guys have talked about, even if we had somebody manually to go through it, it's a lot of detail for them to try to keep in mind, because a lot of times, and for us, that would have been probably an accounting department function. So the accounting department function, those are not the people necessarily that are the best judges of whether those rates are accurate or not. The next step of it would have been to say, and sort of RateLinx kind of guiding us through this, to say, okay, now that we make the knowledge of our tariffs so RateLinx can get at them, and so make sure that they're part of the system. So the second big piece of this for us was to say, are the rates that we have in the system accurate? So now first step is, okay, we know we can link them. Second step is to make sure that they're accurate and make sure that they're kicked out. If not, and that we can have some sort of review and audit piece to make sure that what we're linking up is indeed what we should be charged. For us also, that becomes a speed thing, because as we would have been doing it, as you guys have talked about, if we would have applied people to it, two problems with that. It would have been slow. It's not as fast as what it is through RateLinx. And the second part of it is that it takes a lot of resources. We do farm that piece off, rely on the RateLinx technology to do it as fast as they do it. And that's, for us, has been a big part of this, as you guys have talked about before.
And Shawn, if you had velocity is so important these days, how would you describe the speed at which RateLinx does it?
To be honest with you, I think it's lightning fast for us. It's a little bit of a magic, but right, it's a little bit of us saying, to be honest with you, I'm not as concerned about the speed anymore because they do handle it so well. Where we would have had to concern ourselves with speed and the lag time. One of the things that maybe sort of goes underappreciated, to be honest with you, is the fact that it really isn't a consideration. And sort of that's a tribute to how quickly and sort of effectively it happens.
What I'm hearing you say, if I'm hearing you right, Shawn, is while speed's important, doing it right is more important. And you are getting both there in many ways. Shawn, is that right?
I don't know more, but certainly equally as important, because I think if the value's not right or the amount isn't right, I think you're dead. I think if it takes too long, I think you're equally dead.
You bring that into perfect focus for our listening audience here today, Shawn. And those are the stakes oftentimes. Shannon, Shawn said, lightning fast, I believe is the phrase he used. Is he exaggerating? Your thoughts?
Lightning moves pretty quick, but it is the computer. So technically, it is kind of the bits and the bytes inside the computer that is doing most of the work. I mean, it's fast. Again, the computer does most of the work, and then the human element's there to deal with any discrepancies. And that's where our team and the process that they follow now comes in and takes that speed and verifies the accuracy. And I think that's the coupling. The computer gives us speed, the human gives us accuracy. And by having those conversations with the carriers, we're closing the loop. So that way we're not just making a change to an invoice, saying it's wrong, and then all of a sudden Shawn and his team is going to get a whole bunch of carriers saying, hey, what are you doing? I don't think these are wrong. Because every once in a while, what we find is that we just don't have the latest pricing agreement. Maybe somebody just, with all of his locations and branches, somebody could make a change, who knows? And they just didn't get it to us in time. So that's where we're going to catch that also. And that's the accuracy piece. So I think that gives us a lot of credibility, not only with our customers, but with the carriers. So when carriers engage with us, they're like, oh, good, it's RateLinx again. We know that they're going to verify, they're going to, talk to us. And if there's any issues, we're going to get resolution from the RateLinx team, and we're going to get good, clear explanations. We don't just, go through, and it's not just about speed, like Shawn said. And
right.
I think that's a testament to how our process works, that nobody really talks about it anymore because it's so accurate. The accuracy is there in the time frame that everybody needs. I think that's the important part.
Agreed. And one of the parts of your response there that I really liked, it's come up in previous conversations. It sounds cliche, but everybody can win. The carrier, Jaeckle Distributors, becomes better, more appealing business to all the carriers because of the optimization and the improvement, where they're winning, the carriers are winning, customers are winning, the ecosystem wins. And that's when we can really move some mountains. All right. So Shawn, good stuff here. I appreciate your time sharing what I think a lot of other folks can learn from and hopefully do in their own organizations. We've promised today, Shawn, to walk through 3 ways a TMS can provide companies more predictable profits, amongst other things. We've talked about matching the freight invoices to shipments and, of course, paying the right rates on those freight invoices. What's that third critical step when it comes to getting our arms around the shipping costs, Shawn?
The 3 steps that we went through is the third step was sort of like, now we have the order, or as you said, the freight expense tied to the shipment. We obviously know what orders we're shipping and how we're shipping them. That sort of unlocks the ability for us, because we know that what orders are tied to what branches for us. We know what orders are tied to what customers. We know what manufacturer items make up what orders. We then can use the metrics for the business, the way we would evaluate how a region is doing or a branch location, how we would evaluate how a territory manager for us is doing with their group of customers. And we do this with a lot of our sort of expenses and our revenue. And that's why, and was consistent with this path that we were heading down. And the piece that we were missing was being able to itemize, some of those freight costs. And again, the technology was there. The idea, and I've said this in training sometimes, our business intelligence software was a bit like binoculars, right? Like you could watch a football game, but if you still don't know what's going on in the football game, all it does is bring it closer to you. You still don't understand what's going on, right? That's really our BI system. I think it's very capable. But I think for us, the pieces of this and what we're really trying to do is to say everything that was an expense to us, those could be credit costs as well. Those could be freight costs. Those could be even customer service utilization costs. How are we able to tie those things to orders? And then because of our sort of internal metrics of being able to tie orders to manufacturers, orders to customers, orders to branches, orders to our territory managers, it sort of really unlocks the ability to be able to look at the expenses and the profitability in each of those regions with each of those people and each of those manufacturers to say, we get a little bit closer to what the real profitability for a branch is or a territory or a manufacturer. From there, it kind of is about how can we do this better then? To say, what choices do we need to make with our own fleet or with our carriers? What choices do we need to make within our own business to say, how do we utilize that sort of knowledge and cost detail that we have to say, how do we become more profitable? And that's something like where we balance it with the cost of the solution, where we balance it with the cost even of our BI solution, is to say, does the value of our decisions then offset the cost of being able to work with RateLinx? That's where we sort of make sure that in a company our size, utilizing the tools, utilizing the partnerships, actually for us, then turn out to be able to make better profitability decisions for the business.
Absolutely. And I'm going to steal that binoculars analogy you shared there, Shawn. I love that one. But Shannon, I love how Shawn spoke about, again, it brings back that term surgical back to the conversation. What they've done is helped empower and enable better management. They know their business better to make those better decisions involving profitability and other things, which begs the question, Shannon, we've touched on this a little bit in a couple of different ways. Why aren't more businesses connecting that every order to shipping costs? Is it about peanut butter, Shannon?
It is the peanut butter, man. Everyone loves it. I think, the challenge again is it's just so manual to do it. We run into this with a lot of customers where, we were able to connect the data in a way where they can find savings around the freight side that they never could find before. Because, you're going to have routings with certain customers where you have to ship it that way. So if you're putting new rates in place with a carrier or you're trying to optimize how you're moving freight, you have to be aware of that and be able to take that freight out of the equation because it's like you can't move it any differently. That customer requires that, which is going to help you not get any false savings potential out there as well. So that's where I think, that makes a huge difference for companies. And they just, again, it's the cost. And I think working with the right partner that has the right experience, because we audit a lot of freight bills, but we're not just a settlement service. We're here to provide that business intelligence. And that's where we've coupled the technology with the business intelligence side to make sure that our customers are getting what they need. I mean, that's how our customers are able to, leverage this system to get huge amounts of savings and really trust what they're seeing to manage what could be a large spend within their organization. It's probably a large percentage of their overall cost. And that's really how this was built anyways from the very beginning.
Yeah. Much more holistic conversation and partnerships for sure is what I'm hearing. And again, that trust is so critical across the ecosystem that we touched on a few minutes ago. You brought it back out there, Shannon. All right, Shawn, as we start to kind of come around the home stretch here, as we pull all this together, we walk through, and then maybe at a higher level, in your words, how has ShipLinx, TMS, and RateLinx Freight Audit and Pay really helped Jaeckle Distributors better manage your business and, again, drive more predictable profits? Any final words there?
Even though the initial inquiry with Shannon was kind of along the lines of, how do we do a better job itemizing the expenses? One of the things he touched on is, I think for us, freight expense obviously probably is our second biggest expense behind HR costs. And Shannon may be able to break this down into different pieces. But to me, there's a front end piece that is a choice of carrier, that it's a front end interface that the people in our warehouse, that when they're shipping this, whether it's common carrier or parcel, are using. And part of that is to work with Shannon's team to make sure that that interface is an interface that they can handle, to make sure that the changes that happen with carriers in terms of accessorials that we need and things like that are available. We've talked a lot here about sort of how we've used it to analyze and affect the strategy of the business, which I think is a big part of it, and maybe the reason we had the first conversation. What we found was the front end choice of carrier, the audit, some of the rate shop stuff, things like that have been really valuable, I think, for people that are charged with sort of executing that part of the business. In the middle of it is sort of us being able to do this audit and freight pay to make sure it facilitates that without us assigning people in accounting to do that. So that was a conscious choice that we made. It says, hey, this is going to be a person that we're not going to have here on staff. We're going to use this where RateLinx is concerned. And so for us, it is sort of that integration. And again, Shannon's team working with our accountants to make sure that the way that we code these things is a big part of how the system is configured as well. And then to me, the third big part of that is the way that we're using it to sort of analyze the expenses. Even though we've kind of talked here about our thought process with getting it as part of our business intelligence and our analysis, if you were to probably talk to somebody in the warehouse here, they would talk about using the software front end to be able to get ready to do a parcel shipment or to look up a common carrier choice. If you were to talk to people here about the accounting side of it, they would talk about the freight audit and pay piece. And then for us, sort of, on the management side or trying to analyze the profitability, we'd be able to talk about the work of all of those people and sort of caring about this and being able to be accurate and match these costs up is sort of really what's unlocked our ability to sort of look at it from a profitability standpoint. That's kind of the way I'd break it down.
So Shannon, when you hear Shawn share all the different ways that y'all's partnership has unlocked certain big advantages for the business, what do you think is the most important out of what Shawn shared there for folks out there listening or tuned in or watching?
Well, I think it's just the fact that we're giving them the tool they need in the right spot in their business. And I think that's something that can be forgotten, is that there's a front end side of this. You think about a life cycle of freight. You've got the beginning shipment, it's going out the door. Maybe you're doing some rate shopping to figure out the right carrier to move this order. Then you've got the freight invoice coming in that has to then match up to that shipment. So it's going to give you a couple things. One, it's going to give you this business intelligence. So from a financial perspective, how much did that order really cost? Because your shipment, when you create it, to me, that's what you hope to pay. That's the preseason here that we're in right now at the NFL. I'm hoping that the Bears are great this year. But then once you start playing the games and the W's and L's go in the right columns, that's when the freight invoices are coming in and you can see, how did we really do? How did we really perform? And you got to match that up. So that way you can make adjustments if you have to. Because what we see a lot of times is if you don't have a good tool on the front end side, people aren't going to use it that well. They're going to kind of work around it. And you're going to see that on the back end side. Or if the back end side isn't right, they're going to work around it. So that's where you got to put the right tool in the right person's hands that fits that scenario for them the right way. That way it becomes a real valuable piece of equipment that they have to use. And I think that's how, we were able to do that for Jaeckle and the rest of our customers. And I think it's a testament to the flexibility of our software. And quite frankly, that's how all of our customers get the value out of us. So putting the right piece of the software in the right spot, and we're able to do that, I think, in a very, very easy way for our customers.
Being able to make those adjustments, those critical adjustments that you were talking about, continuing your football analogy in early part of the season, mid-season, even in mid-game, right? But making those adjustments with rooted in facts and data and reality, so we're not fooling ourselves, right? Not fooling yourself is kind of important when you're really trying to get to profitability gains. Good stuff there. Okay, we're going to wrap today with some resources for folks. We're going to make sure folks know how to connect with Shannon and Shawn. And then, folks, we're going to give you some other ammunition to learn more about what they've described here. Shannon Vaillancourt, you're always up for a hard-hitting supply chain conversation, aren't you?
Always.
Always. Every day of the week. Even better if it's on a golf course, folks. Even better if it's on a golf course. All right, so let's do this. Shawn, congrats on all the gains and the progress and the growth that y'all have been experiencing at Jaeckle Distributors. Really, and I appreciate you taking time out here to have a supply chain conversation with us about doing things better. How can folks connect with you and the Jaeckle Distributors team?
On our website, Jaeckle Distributors, www.jaeckleddistributors.com, we have sort of employee cards. You can find me there. My email address would be there, so you could reach out to me there. You could also try to connect with me on LinkedIn. The beauty of the name is there's probably not a lot of gags on LinkedIn. It's been a character builder for a lot of years, and now it's a good identifier. So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can reach out through the Jaeckle Distributors website, either way.
Love it. Love those character builders in life. That's so important, my friend. Great to have you here today. All right, Shannon Vaillancourt, here, there, and everywhere. How can folks track you down and the RateLinx team on the move?
You can always hit our website, ratelinx.com, or hit me up on LinkedIn. Always available. Love to chat with anyone that wants to talk more about this stuff.
Outstanding. Shannon, I want to ask you this question from our friend William. William, great to see you. Does TMS data figure into your customer segmentation, or is it just providing the opportunity to make data-driven decisions with respect to shipments? Shannon, any perspective you want to share on that?
I definitely hear from customers that it does. There's a lot of things that I see them doing with respect to freight by customer, and not only freight by customer, but also understanding like transit time by customer to see what they can do to service the customers in certain time frames and things like that.
It does impact segmentation for us in terms of knowing the freight expenses. I mean, whenever we could be shipping things like tubes of caulk all the way up to quartz slabs. So with that range of product that we would offer to the customer, we have 12 product categories on the flooring side of things, 5 on the surfacing side of things. So for us to have a better handle across not just customer segments, which could be commercial, could be fabricators on the surfacing side of things, but also sort of on the product categories, all of that information that we get, the more we can accurately apply cost to the different segments allows us to make better decisions in terms of whether we want to grow, whether we want to monitor, how it is that we want to handle those different segments and sort of be intelligent about our approach to those.
Appreciate your response there, that intelligent, surgical approach of knowing your business, including shipping and everything else. So appreciate that, Shawn and Shannon. Okay, we're talking about resources here. So folks, y'all know now how to connect with Shannon and Shawn. Shannon, we got some really cool stuff coming up. We want to first offer some more information here on an interesting partnership that y'all have had with Pentair. Check this out. How about $12 million in LTL savings annually? Yes, sign me up. I'll have what they're having. And that's just part of the outcomes from this partnership here. So check out the case study. We're dropping that there in the comments, so it's really easy for y'all to check that out. Shannon, quite a powerful partnership there with Pentair, huh?
Yeah, again, another company that's really doing things very similar to Shawn. They're just on a little bit larger scale. So again, the data can really unlock a lot of potential for you.
That's right. Move mountains for sure. And then next up, hey, don't take our word for it. Go meet with Shannon and the RateLinx team and their growing ecosystem in person. The second annual RateLinx Insight Conference is coming up in beautiful Scottsdale, Arizona on October 15th and 16th. And folks, I'm going to be there. I cannot wait to share some of my observations over the year as we have hundreds of these conversations. So it feels like every month, but not quite every month. But good stuff here from Shawn and Shannon. We're going to be sharing some of our key takeaways, but check out the conference. We'd love for y'all to join us. And in new news here today, Supply Chain Now and RateLinx excited to invite you to participate in the first annual Transportation Management Technology Survey. Now, you may be asking, why should you participate? I'll tell you why. You want to uncover industry challenges. You want to influence technological advancements, gain valuable insights, benchmark your practices. And the best part, I think, is everyone that takes the survey is going to receive the full 2024 TM Tech report in October 2024. So we're sharing that link for this new initiative between our organizations right there in the chat. So check that out today. And Shannon and Shawn, where I think we've dropped y'all's LinkedIn in the chat. We're inviting folks to check out the case study, the conference, and the new forthcoming research report. We're dropping that link momentarily in the chat, so y'all check that out. What an outstanding conversation. Shawn and Shannon, y'all ready for football season? I know I am.
I am.
Ready.
Ready to do it. Y'all take those predictions beyond everything else we've talked about. Shawn's got the Chargers. Shannon says not the first pick in the draft for the Bears 3 years in a row. Take that to the bank. But folks, big thanks to Shawn Gagg, CIO of Jaeckle Distributors. Shawn, thanks so much.
Thank you, Scott.
You bet. And as always, thanks to our friend Shannon Vaillancourt, CEO with RateLinx. Appreciate how you're helping organizations do supply chain different. Shannon, thanks for being here today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you too, Shawn. Appreciate it.
Outstanding. And as I mentioned, we just dropped that last link, that research report. Y'all come join us. Your inputs and your perspectives and experiences is what's going to power those findings. So check that out. To our audience, hey, thanks for all of y'all for being here. I know we didn't get everybody's comments and questions. Next time, a lot of good stuff already. But folks, you got to take something. Shawn and Shannon laid out some powerful perspective, been there, done that, experiences and outcomes, but new best practices here today. Take at least one thing from what they shared, put it into practice. Your team is ready to change how business is doing. It's like that day that Shannon, the auditor, how their days changed by leaning into this technology is just out there, right at your fingertips. If you're willing to lean in, get out of that comfort zone and change how business is done. But whatever you do, deeds, not words, about action, less talk, more action. But on behalf of the entire Supply Chain Now team here, Scott Luton challenging you, do good, give forward, be the change that's needed. And we'll see you next time right back here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for being a part of our Supply Chain Now community. Check out all of our programming at supplychainnow.com and make sure you subscribe to Supply Chain Now anywhere you listen to podcasts. And follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. See you next time on Supply Chain Now.